Hey folks, tonight we're slipping into a place darker than a cellar, smellier than a stable, and packed with more regret than a spoiled feast. Welcome to the brothel, where romance goes to vanish and cleanliness never signed in. So before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy drifting into slightly unsettling yet fully factual history. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights and sink under your blankets. Have you ever wondered what life was really like inside a medieval brothel? Was it filled with velvet cushions and endless wine? Or more like drafty rooms, strange stews, and customers who hadn't seen a bath in 10 years? How did the workers manage to survive in a place with more drama than a theater, stricter rules than a monastery, and hygiene standards that would make your college roommate look spotless? What did they eat? What did they wear? Did anyone ever sleep? Or was it just a medieval version of customer service that never closed, only with a higher chance of arrest? Let's find out. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1352, right in the middle of the medieval red light district. You're cold, disoriented, and slightly hungover from ale that probably had more fungus than barley. Ahead of you lies a night that will make you grateful for every dull Tuesday you've ever lived. You stumble through a cramped alley that reeks of rotten cabbage, only to be greeted by a flickering sign and a door that creaks louder than your knees. Inside, the air is thick with smoke, cheap perfume, and the nervous energy of people who all insist their name is Margaret. Welcome to your new lodging for the night. Don't mind the rats, they come included. Picture the scene. You're cold, exhausted, and lost all feeling in your toes somewhere after stepping in the third puddle. Behind you, the alley is alive with the strangely specific soundtrack of medieval nightlife, the crash of a dropped tankard, someone shouting about onions, and the unmistakable splash of a chamber pot being emptied into the street. If you're thinking this is just an inn with a little extra atmosphere, think again. A medieval brothel is part boarding house, part tavern, part fever dream, and nothing your history teacher dared to bring up. As soon as you step across the threshold, a storm of scents assaults you. Stale beer, smoky tallow candles, damp wool, and someone's failed attempt to cover it all with a handful of lavender. Perfume here isn't worn so much as deployed, smothering centuries of stains and silent regrets. If there's a draft, it's not from the windows, it's the collective sigh of everyone realizing there's no turning back. The first thing you notice is the decor, a cross between a forgotten attic and a creative fire hazard. The furniture is mismatched, often scavenged from customers who skipped out on their bill or disappeared during the winter. A crooked table holds a single candle on the verge of burning out. Three-legged stools wobble beneath people with two working legs, and questionable morals. On the wall, a faded tapestry depicts either a biblical miracle or someone dropping a pie. It's hard to say. You're welcomed, if that's the right word, by a bonnet-wearing figure whose main duty seems to be glaring at strangers. They don't bother asking your name. No one here cares, but they do ask if you're paying in advance. You nod, trying to look like someone who understands money. Coins are handed over, counted again, and swiftly pocketed. Receipts don't exist. Your only proof of payment is the faint hope that the madam remembers your face. Now, for the other guests. A traveling merchant snores flat on the bar, missing both his shoes and his wallet. Two farmhands in the corner whisper loud enough for the entire room to hear while working up the courage to approach Margaret, though which Margaret is still up for debate. A minor noble in a badly tailored doublet tries and fails to blend in. He's the only one whose boots haven't been chewed by rats. You're led to your quarters, which is merely a small, chilly room separated from the next by a tattered curtain and the collective will of the building's residents. The bed is a sack filled with straw, rough and uneven, marked with stains. You hope are wine, but suspect are much older than the 100 Years' War. A tiny candle flickers on the floor, barely taller than your thumb, threatening to extinguish itself out of sympathy. But the real highlight of the room is your fellow occupants. You've got 2 house cats of unclear color, 1 brave mouse, and a grumpy, ancient rooster who seems to be here against its will. Every sound is amplified. The scraping of bowls, the jingle of coins, the muffled discussion about whether last week's bread is still safe to eat. Through the thin wall, you hear laughter, crying, and the occasional medieval customer service disaster. Just as you're settling in, the madam herself arrives. She eyes you with the exhausted gaze of someone who's seen too many people try to pay with buttons. She offers you a cup of wine, which is suspiciously thick and tastes like it may have been strained through an old sock. You drink it anyway. It's either that or the well water, and no one recommends the well water. As night falls and the brothel truly comes to life, you realize your modern issues, like losing Wi-Fi or not getting enough oat milk, are nothing compared to discovering you're not alone in your room. You pull your rough blanket over your head, listen to the distant sounds of medieval nightlife, and silently thank your ancestors for inventing walls, locks, and soap. Thus begins your first night in the medieval brothel. If you survive until morning, you might just get breakfast, assuming the rooster lets you sleep at all. Welcome to history's worst Airbnb. Forget royalty. The brothel madam is the real authority here. She runs the operation with an iron ladle, a sharp tongue, and the incredible ability to detect unpaid bills across 3 rooms. She sighs you up in seconds and decide whether you're trouble, a customer, or, worst of all, competition. Let's talk about power. Kings may rule empires, but the madam rules something much scarier. A building full of desperate workers, demanding patrons, and animals that don't pay rent. She's got more authority than the local sheriff, more charm than the traveling friar, and a memory for debts that makes accountants look forgetful. She remembers every coin, every broken promise, and every sock left under a mattress since last Christmas. You notice her immediately, partly because she's the only one not rushing anywhere. She glides through chaos with the calm of someone who has nothing left to fear. Not fire, not famine, not even the city's annual clean-up the streets day. Her attire is a mishmash of different periods, stitched together into an imposing patchwork of velvet, wool, and determination. Her hair is tightly wound, every strand perfectly in place, daring any lice to try. With a single raised eyebrow, she can silence a brawl, and with one shout, she can summon every worker, cleaner, and chicken in the building to her side. Weapon of choice. Not a sword, but the sharpest wooden spoon in existence. Perfect for breaking up fights, prodding suspicious stew, or tapping the knuckles of anyone slow to settle their bill. The madam's day starts before dawn and ends. Never, really. She keeps a ledger under lock and key, although her mind is probably safer than any lock in the city. She juggles bookings, checks, supplies, negotiates prices, and maintains order with diplomatic skills that would make the Pope envious. Someone once tried to scam her with a fake coin. It's said she chased him down 3 streets and got her money back, plus interest and a free goose. She knows every secret in the neighborhood. If you want gossip, the madam already knows how. It ends. If you want credit, she'll laugh in your face and then offer you a bowl of soup as consolation. She has a network of spies, mostly nosy neighbors and bored cats, who report on every visitor, late payment, and missing towel. The local bailiff, she calls him by his childhood nickname, and if he shows up for a random inspection, she'll offer him tea and a gentle reminder about the time he lost a boot in her cellar. The madam is part boss, part therapist, and part medieval security system. She settles disputes about whose turn it is to use the good pillow, heals broken hearts with tough love and stale bread, and can spot a liar from miles away. She gives new workers the once-over with a gaze that says, "I've seen worse, but not much." Try to outsmart her and you'll end up cleaning the yard for a week or worse. Stuck feeding the geese. Occasionally, a customer tries to charm his way into a discount or a free drink. The madam handles this by telling a story so embarrassing, so mortifying, and so personalized that even the most persistent penny pincher suddenly remembers he left the oven on at home. It's rumored she once convinced a local lord to pay double just to ensure he wouldn't be mentioned by name at dinner. The house provides a few worn-out pairs of shoes, passed around like a communal loaf of bread. Some have holes, others have mismatched laces, and all of them have a persistent, vague dampness that can only be described as dubious. Many simply go barefoot, which is as medieval as it gets, until you step on something sharp, and immediately regret the advancements of modern technology. Let's not overlook the true stars of the dress code, lice. Lice aren't just an inconvenience, they're practically part of the uniform. In an era where bathing happens only occasionally and combs are considered a luxury, fleas and lice flourish in every hem, collar, and sadly, personal space. In brothel fashion, you're never alone. Scratching has become such a common activity that it has a rhythm of its own. Like the occasional clink of coins or the distant sound of someone tumbling down the stairs. Jewelry is minimal and mostly practical. The typical brothel worker might have a scrap of ribbon, a bit of colored glass strung on a thread, or a lucky pin kept for self-defense or poking overzealous clients. Real gold, only if someone left it behind in a hurry. And in that case, it's immediately seized by the madam for the communal fund, which, strangely, never seems to improve anything except the madam's collection of suspiciously nice hats. Hairstyles are simple and functional. Hair is tied back in a knot, hidden under a cap, or braided to keep it out of the communal food. Lice treatments are homemade, ranging from vinegar rinses to hopeful chants. The house has a communal brush, but it's rumored to be cursed. The aura of regret is a less obvious accessory, but it clings to every outfit all the same. There's something humbling about wearing the same tunic you've seen on 5 different co-workers and 3 customers. If you catch yourself yearning for a velvet corset, remember that in medieval times, velvet was so expensive that it could get you robbed, imprisoned, or both. Here, you're safer in your patchwork. And if you really want to stand out, clean socks are the rarest of luxuries. If you own a pair, guard them with your life. By the end of the week, they'll have been borrowed, traded, and probably stolen. In a world without fabric, softener, or scented dryer sheets, the simple pleasure of warm, dry socks is the closest thing to heaven a brothel worker is likely to experience. So, next time you complain about laundry day, spare a thought for the brothel dress code. Less lace, more lice, and a fashion sense best described as post-apocalyptic chic. If you want to survive the night, wear whatever you can, patch it with pride, and remember that the only thing more stubborn than stains here are the stories. Meet your customers, merchants, soldiers, weary travelers, and a surprising number of clergy who insist they're only here to save souls. Each visitor brings their own distinct smell, haggling skills, and medieval misunderstandings of personal boundaries. Let's take a slow, slightly horrified tour through tonight's guests, because the clientele of a medieval brothel are nothing if not memorable. First up are the merchants. They're the ones who swagger in with jingling purses and cleaner fingernails. They always claim to be just passing through on urgent business, but somehow they know every local drink special by heart. Their bargaining technique, haggling for 20 minutes over the price of a room, then paying with a foreign coin no one can actually use. Merchants love talking about themselves, their goods, and the time they almost did business with a duke, kept the duke tragically died of natural causes. Translation: plague or bad soup. Next, we have the soldiers. Gruff, loud, and covered in so much mud you could plant vegetables on their boots. Soldiers travel in packs and think they're charming. Most have been on the road for weeks, so when they say they smell like victory, it's more literal and nose-watering than anything. Their table manners are creative, and their idea of romance is arguing over who gets the least uncomfortable corner of the straw mattress. Still, if you want gossip about battles or the latest town that got razed, these are your go-to sources. Just don't expect them to remember your name or their own by morning. Travelers make up the regulars. These are the hollow-eyed folks who shuffle in at all hours, carrying nothing but a walking stick, a bag full of regrets, and a blanket that feels like dried fish. They're just grateful for shelter, a hot meal, and a night without being rained on by either the elements or someone's chamber pot. Travelers don't complain much. They're too tired to notice if the stew has extra protein or if the mattress bites back. They'll sleep through anything, even medieval karaoke night. And then, of course, there are the clergy. So many clergy, officially. They're here to check on the spiritual well-being of the house. But everyone knows the real reason. You'll hear a lot about sin, repentance, and the value of generosity. Usually right before someone leaves their coin purse under a pillow. Some clergy are regulars, dropping wisdom, and sometimes actual pearls, if they're well connected, before disappearing at sunrise with a vow of silence and a suspicious rash. Others claim they're just here for the soup. No one buys it, but the parade of regret doesn't end there. Occasionally, you get a nobleman slumming it in disguise, thinking no one will recognize him beneath his common hat, which is actually a velvet cap with a feather so large it blocks the candlelight. He'll try to pay with promises, poetry, or invitations to a feast that almost certainly doesn't exist. If caught, he'll swear he's just a simple shepherd searching for lost sheep. Everyone rolls their eyes and lets him keep the act, if only for the entertainment value. You'll also meet the perpetually broke locals. These are the same faces every week, each with a new tale about why they can't pay tonight, but will definitely make it up next time. One lost his purse to a pickpocket. One is mourning a beloved pig. One claims the moon is in retrograde, and it's bad luck to pay for anything on a Tuesday. The madam keeps a special list for these cases, and they usually end up doing chores or cleaning up after the goat until their debts are settled, which is medieval for never. Let's not forget the occasional tourists, lost students, runaway apprentices, or traveling minstrels. These folks have big dreams, empty pockets, and are usually running from something: a failed romance, a bad Latin exam, or the local constable. They bring stories from far away, a little music, and, unfortunately, a fresh batch of lice. Each customer brings something to the brothel: a new rumor, a new stain, a new chapter in the ongoing saga of what happened last night. Personal boundaries. Not really a thing. A handshake might turn into a hug, or someone might wander into the wrong bed and declare it fate by morning. The parade of regret heads back out into the world, taking their secrets, their questionable change, and a faint scent of tallow candles. With them, if you're lucky, all you'll get is a new story to tell. If not, well, that's why the house keeps extra vinegar on hand. If you're hoping for a luxurious soak in a fragrant bath, lower your expectations. The communal bath is a leaky barrel in the yard, and the soap smells like sheep. Most guests just try to drown their troubles in ale and hope the lice don't notice. Let's break your modern heart right now. Personal hygiene in a medieval brothel isn't just low on the list. It's in the basement. Despite her tough exterior, there's a strange sense of loyalty within the house. The workers may complain about her rules, but when the city watch comes knocking or a fight threatens to spill into the streets, it's the madam everyone counts on. She's the only one who can get the stove going, calm an irate customer, and scare away rodents with a single clap. To outsiders, the madam might seem imposing, perhaps even harsh, but to those inside, she's the last barrier against the chaos of the world. She offers loans with interest, unsolicited advice, and the occasional hug, strictly after hours and never in public. Ultimately, she's the reason the brothel stays in business. Without her, the roof would collapse, the stew would burn, and everyone would be sleeping outside with the goats. So if you ever find yourself in a medieval brothel, be courteous, settle your bill promptly, and never underestimate the power of a woman with a ledger, a spoon, and a list of grudges longer than the Magna Carta. Before you get too comfortable, you're handed a list of house rules longer than a church sermon. No fighting, no free samples, no credit, and for the love of everything holy, no singing after midnight. Soap is strictly rationed and barely used. Let's take a closer look at these time-honored rules. Surviving in a medieval brothel isn't just about endurance, it's about compliance. First, you'll notice the rules are scrawled on a scrap of parchment in suspiciously blotchy ink. Some of the rules appear to have been added recently, likely after last night's incident with the goose. Others are so ancient that even the madam isn't entirely sure what they mean anymore. No juggling torches in the main room. Someone definitely learned that lesson the hard way. Rule number 1. No fighting inside the house. This isn't a wild tavern or a medieval fight club. If you absolutely must challenge someone to a duel, please take it outside, preferably out of view of the town guard. Broken chairs cost money, and the madam has no interest in adding furniture repair to her already packed agenda. You'll find that bruised egos should be handled quietly behind the privy, or with a mutual exchange of passive-aggressive glares. Next up, no free samples. The brothel may be medieval customer service's answer to the modern world, but it draws the line at charity. Anyone caught giving out free services is immediately put on laundry duty, which means boiling bed sheets in a cauldron large enough to drown your spirits. Oddly enough, no one ever asks for seconds. No credit, ever, and the madam means it. Forget about paying tomorrow. Forget about leaving your purse at home. Unless you're royalty, And even then, your night starts and ends with cash up front. Any attempt to barter, trade IOUs, or offer your second best chicken will be met with a look of such severe disappointment it could sour fresh milk. No singing after midnight. This rule was enforced after an infamous week when an overly ambitious apprentice bard serenaded the entire block with his song of 12 turnips. Everyone agreed it was a catchy tune at first. The punishment for late night singing now includes mopping floors, wrangling animals, and a temporary ban on soup. Now, let's talk about the soap. It's the most coveted, fiercely protected, and heartbreakingly rare item in the building. The rule is simple: thou shalt not steal the soap. This rule is both practical and symbolic. The soap is, at best, a small, worn piece with a mysterious origin passed from guest to guest, carrying at least 5 distinct scents, none of them pleasant. If you steal it, the whole house will know, because you'll be the only one who smells faintly of stale soap instead of goat. Soap usage is strictly controlled. Workers get a ceremonial hand washing before dinner, and an actual bath on alternate saints' days. For customers, it's a privilege, not a right. If you're caught sneaking in an extra scrub, prepare for the madam's fury and a lengthy lecture on communal hygiene. Considering the average medieval person bathed once a month, the very existence of soap in the house is a luxury. No livestock upstairs. That rule was established after an incident involving a chicken, 2 goats, and a bucket of ale. Let's just say the lesson was learned, and the stains never really came out of the carpet. If your animal can't pay, it sleeps outside. There are also a few unspoken rules you'll pick up quickly. Don't ask too many questions about what's in the stew. Never comment on someone's real name, especially if they insist it's Marjorie. And if the rooster comes inside, just leave him be. He's earned his place. These rules aren't just for show. They're the glue that keeps the chaos from falling apart. Without them, every night would turn into a disaster of spilled ale, broken furniture, and at least one small fire. The madam understands this and enforces order with the grim determination of a medieval schoolmaster nursing a hangover. Everyone worker, guest, goat falls in line or quickly wishes they had not-so. As you settle in, clutching your precious sliver of soap and practicing your best silent hum, remember, in the medieval brothel, obedience isn't just a pastime, it's a matter of survival, because nothing ruins a night faster than the madam finding out you tried to take the soap. You thought medieval brothels were all silk and intrigue. Think again. Most workers wear worn linen, patched wool, and the occasional hand-me-down tunic that's seen more action than a knight's shield. Accessories include decorative fleas and a subtle air of regret. Forget everything you've learned from raunchy paintings and high-budget TV shows. In a real medieval brothel, luxury was mostly an illusion, like those velvet curtains that turned out to be sheep's wool dyed a heroic shade of burgundy. The real dress code is dictated by 2 factors: what's warm and what hasn't fallen apart yet. If you're imagining sultry robes and a feathered mask, adjust your expectations to layers of potato sack with extra holes. The most common fabric in the brothel is linen. At least it used to be linen before centuries of hard labor, quick repairs, and enthusiastic washing turned it into something only described as historically durable. The standard under-tunic is a washed-out beige, though sometimes it's more of a mystery color, thanks to the shifting patterns of stains that even the most optimistic washerwoman has given up on. That lacy trim, it's just where the fabric started to fray. Call it medieval distressed chic on top of the linen. There's usually a woolen overdress, patched and repatched until it looks like a map of disappointment. Sometimes there's a faded apron to add a little functional style. If you're lucky, you'll get a borrowed shore scratchy, but good at hiding the fact that your sleeves are mismatched. Brothel workers swap clothes more often than stories, so every garment has lived a full life and likely holds more secrets than the city bailiff. As for shoes, well, that's all about compromise. The idea of a relaxing bubble bath after a long day's work is as realistic as spotting a dragon. Instead, the nightly cleaning ritual is more of a survival challenge than a spa treatment. If you want to freshen up, you're invited to use the notorious bath barrel, which is technically an old wine cask that now serves as both a bath and an ongoing science experiment. The water in this barrel is barely lukewarm if you're first in line, but after the first customer climbs out, the temperature drops and the water gains a bit more. By the time the third bather steps in, it's less of a bath and more of a mixture of skin cells and secrets. On busy nights, the barrel becomes a revolving door of feet, elbows, and hair that may or may not belong to the current staff. No, the water is never changed between baths. That would require both effort and a reliable water source luxuries the house simply can't afford. Soap is a highly prized commodity, and it's really just a dull lump with the smell of wet sheep mixed with overcooked onions. It's handed out in tiny pieces, and everyone has learned to guard theirs as though it were precious gold. Try to sneak in an extra scrub, and you'll earn the madam's wrath faster than someone singing past curfew. For most, a quick rinse of the hands and face is all the effort they'll expend. Full body washes are reserved for special occasions, outbreaks, and visits from important customers. At that point, a heroic amount of perfume is poured on to cover the difference. The rest of the time, you do what medieval people do, best embrace the smell and hope for the best. After all, in a world where everyone is ripe, no one's nose stays clean. The signature scent is a mix of sweat, tallow, ale, and whatever herb was tossed onto the fire last week. Lavender, if you're lucky, cabbage, if you're not. Guests are, if anything, even worse. Travelers arrive smelling like every horse they've ever encountered. Soldiers think dunking their feet in a trough counts as a bath. Merchants try to mask everything with strong cologne, which only complicates matters. The worst offenders are those who claim to be naturally clean. The medieval version of someone bragging about never getting sick from eating anything. Lice, fleas, and there. Extended families are so common that they're practically part of the team. Combs exist, but only in the sense that someone once found a relic without teeth and called it decorative. Picking fleas is a group activity, usually done while gossiping about who skipped out on their bill. Workers have their favorite spots, to sit where the breeze blows the hardest knot to cool off, but in hopes the wind will carry away a few persistent hitchhikers. For those feeling especially luxurious, there's always the option to visit the local bathhouse. But bathhouses come with their own dangers. Gossip, scandal, and a high likelihood of bumping into half the town, including that one priest who always asks far too many questions. Besides, bathhouses are expensive, sometimes banned, and always highly questionable. No one wants to explain to the bishop why they were just there for the steam dot to cover the gaps in cleanliness. The house has a system of strategic laundry. Bedding is changed regularly. Occasionally, shirts and undergarments are rinsed when they begin to smell stronger than the communal cheese. But mostly everything is disguised with fresh rushes on the floor and a prayer to Saint Anthony, patron. saint of lost causes and missing soap. So, as you settle in for the night, surrounded by the fragrant tapestry of medieval life, remember, in this brothel, hygiene isn't a goal, it's a rumor. And tomorrow, you'll be grateful for every drop of that sheep-scented soap, every gust of fresh air, and every excuse to blame the dog for the smell. Because, in the end, history stinks. And so does the brothel. Privacy is a fantasy. You're sharing a room with 3 snoring workers, 2 chickens, and a goat who claims diplomatic immunity. Every creak of the floorboards is a reminder that you're never truly alone. Now, let's talk about what bedroom means in a medieval brothel. If you're expecting a private suite, soft sheets, or, dare you hope, an actual mattress, adjust those expectations immediately. The shared bedroom is a triumph of creative crowd control, featuring a creaky wooden floor, a ceiling so low you can comb your hair with it, and walls made of patched fabric, curtains that do their best, but ultimately fail, to divide the space. The only thing separating you from the next person is the faint hope that everyone else is too exhausted to care. Your sleeping arrangement is less of a bed and more of a communal nest made of straw. A rough pallet stuffed with straw sits on the cold floor, creaking every time someone dares to breathe. If you're lucky, you'll score a spot in the middle, away from the drafty cracks in the wall and only slightly within pecking distance of the chickens. These birds aren't just pets. They're early morning alarms and late-night emotional support animals. Your idea of support is a sharp beak in the foot at 3 a.m. And then there's the goat. No one knows how the goat got here. No one knows how the goat stays here, but he's claimed a corner near the fireplace and glares at anyone who gets too close. The madam says he keeps evil spirits away. Others say he's the reincarnation of a disgruntled landlord. Either way, the goat is the only one allowed to hog the blanket, and if you move it, you do so at your own risk. The soundtrack of your night includes snores at 3 different pitches, someone mumbling their dreams in Old French, the soft rustle of straw as a mouse moves, and the sharp squawk of a chicken settling a personal score. There's always a midnight negotiation about who gets the good pillow, the one with the fewest mysterious stains. It usually ends in compromise, or more likely, no one wins, and everyone settles for a lumpy pile of laundry. Personal space, it's an ancient legend. On the coldest nights, everyone huddles together for warmth, forming a sort of human lasagna, layered with linen, wool, and desperation. You might find yourself spooning with a co-worker you barely know, one arm thrown over the chicken for good measure. No one makes eye contact in the morning. If you think insomnia is a modern problem, try sleeping in a room where someone always needs to get up. Whether it's for the chamber pot located conveniently behind a curtain that only blocks sounds if you believe hard enough, or to feed the animals, or chase off the mouse. And don't forget the parade of customers who occasionally wander into the wrong room, convinced they're looking for Marjorie, when they're really just one curtain away from disaster. Then there's the temperature. In winter, it's so cold. You can see your breath, and your straw pillow gets frosty. In summer, it's a steam bath of bodies and barnyard smells. Ventilation is a polite fiction. A single tiny window lets in just enough fresh air to keep hope alive, but not enough to make any real difference. If you do manage to drift off, the goat usually wakes you at dawn by standing on your feet, reminding you who's really in charge. And yet, in all this chaos, there's a strange sense of comfort. The shared bedroom is where stories are exchanged. Secrets are whispered, and the occasional forbidden laugh escapes despite everyone's best efforts to sleep. You realize, as you pull your blanket tighter and try to ignore the chicken using your shoulder as a perch, that you're living through a slice of history, the exhausting, noisy communal side that never makes it into fairy tales. So, as you lay awake serenaded by snores, livestock, and the distant arguments of your neighbors, remember that privacy is overrated and sleep is optional. In the medieval brothel, you never truly rest alone, because the night, like the rent, is always shared. Forget the 9 to 5. In a medieval brothel, the real action starts after dark. Oil lamps flicker, coins clink, and the air fills with a chorus of fake laughter and actual coughing. You wonder if anyone here has ever had 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep. The sun has barely dipped below the crooked rooftops, and already the brothel is transforming. What was earlier a haven for exhausted workers and the world's laziest goat is now a bustling center of medieval nightlife, if you can call it that. The atmosphere thickens with the haze of candle smoke, spilled ale, and at least 3 competing perfumes, all battling to cover up the faint but persistent odor of turnips and regret. It all starts in the common room. The rickety tables are quickly repopulated with merchants eager to part with their coin, soldiers looking for distraction or a fight, whichever comes first, and clergy whispering prayers and apologies in equal measure. The staff are already in motion, weaving between bodies with a skill that only comes from years of dodging unwanted advances and flying tankards. The night shift is here, and business is officially open. The oil lamps sputter reluctantly, casting everyone in a flattering golden glow. If you're standing at just the right angle, more likely you look like you've stumbled into a dramatic play about the dangers of bad lighting. Shadows gather in every corner, perfect for whispered gossip and covert transactions, or for customers desperately trying to remember which Marjorie they spoke to earlier. The soundtrack is pure medieval. The snap of firewood, the clink of coins being counted twice just to be sure, and the intermittent hacking of a cough that may or may not be contagious. Laughter rises and falls in carefully controlled waves. Everyone, determined to sound more relaxed and successful than they actually feel. The barmaid spins wild tales to the soldiers, each one more exaggerated than the last, because reality has never been a popular drink here. For the workers, the night shift is a test of stamina. There are customers to entertain, drinks to serve, songs to sing, and occasional brawls to break up before the madam steps in with her infamous ladle. Every interaction is a performance. Smiles are rehearsed, jokes are practiced, and every movement is calculated for maximum profit and minimal injury. If you think customer service today is difficult, try doing it in a dress made from recycled bedsheets in a room where the fire keeps going out and half the guests forget your real name. Some customers are kind, some are tragic, and some just want to sleep it off in the corner, leaving muddy footprints and soggy bread behind. On any given night, you might overhear a marriage proposal, a heartfelt confession, or someone vowing eternal love to a barmaid who has already forgotten their face. Secrets are currency, and everyone is constantly trading theirs for a little bit of someone else's. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between songs and arguments, you wonder if anyone actually gets any rest here. The short answer is, no, they don't. Breaks are rare and highly valued. If you manage to escape, it's only to step into the cold night for a breath of air, splash some water on your face, or, if you're desperate, sit on a crate of onions and pretend you're somewhere else. The night feels endless, even when the Last customer stumbles out and the lamps are put out. Sleep is still out of reach. There's bedding to change, coins to count, and a never-ending search for that one missing chicken. By the time the first light of dawn touches the windows, you're left wondering if you worked through the night or simply relived it over and over again. The rooster crows, the goat yawns, and you realize the only thing more persistent than the customers is the feeling that you've never truly slept in a medieval brothel. The night shift is less of a job and more of a survival tactic. Business. As usual, dinner is served. It's pottage again, a thick stew made with vegetables, grains, and something that might have once been a pigeon. If you're lucky, there's stale bread. If you're really lucky, it isn't still moving. Let's debunk the fantasy right now. Dining in a medieval brothel isn't candlelit romance or extravagant feasts. It's more like a game show where the only prize is avoiding food poisoning. Pottage is the house specialty, and by specialty, I mean it's the only thing anyone knows how to prepare. Every night, the same old cauldron sits on the fire, bubbling, with the hope that someone brought a fresh turnip, or at least a handful of barley. It's less of a stew and more of a historical document of everything that's passed through the kitchen this month. The secret ingredient is always whatever's left. Carrots that look like they're questioning their life choices, onions from the bottom of the sack, and a generous scoop of last week's mystery meat, labeled pigeon for plausible deniability. Sometimes it's rabbit, sometimes rat, and once in a while, a very unlucky chicken. You don't ask too many questions. That's how rumors start, and rumors get you stuck with dishwashing duty. Let's talk texture. Pottage isn't smooth. It's hearty, lumpy, and sometimes chewy in ways that vegetables really shouldn't be. The broth changes color depending on what's been boiled in it lately, ranging from murky brown to a suspicious shade of green. Some nights you hit the jackpot and find an actual whole bean. Other nights, you wonder if that crunch was a bone, or just an overly ambitious grain of barley. Then there's the bread. Ah, medieval bread. The only thing harder than the workers' lives. The loaf is dense, grey, and so stale it could be used as a weapon in the event of a tavern brawl. If you drop it, it either shatters or leaves a dent in the table. Slicing it requires both skill and strength. On rare occasions, someone brings in a soft piece from the baker's wife. This is so monumental, it's celebrated with applause and a moment of silence. If you're hoping for butter or cheese, you're in the wrong social class. Dairy is reserved for special occasions, visiting nobles, or bribes for the city inspector. Occasionally, there's a spread, a suspicious smear of something claiming to be lard. You try not to think about it too much, because overthinking is dangerous in a medieval kitchen. The kitchen itself is a marvel of medieval engineering. A smoky hearth, one pot that's never properly scrubbed, and an assortment of wooden spoons and knives so dull they might actually be safer than actual cutlery. Dishes are washed with boiling water, sand, and prayer. The cook, usually someone who failed at every other job, wields a ladle like a weapon and threatens anyone who complains about portion sizes. For drinks, you're served weak ale or watered-down wine. Water is avoided for good reason. It's safer to risk a mild hangover than whatever's lurking in the town well. On special occasions, someone sneaks in a jug of something stronger. But be warned, the last person who drank from it claimed to have seen saints and then couldn't walk straight for a week. Dessert, you ask? There is no dessert. At best, you might find a shriveled apple or a dried-out fig hidden in someone's apron. The concept of after-dinner sweets is just another myth. right up there with regular bathing and comfortable shoes. Meals are communal, loud, and full of side commentary. The conversation ranges from the day's gossip to the latest debate about what exactly was floating in the pottage. No one eats alone, and everyone is eager to trade their bread crust for your slightly less moldy turnip. So, as you finish a meal feeling strangely thankful to have made it through dinner without breaking a tooth, keep in mind that in the medieval brothel, food is less about flavor and more about survival. And if you're still hungry, there's always more stew. There's always more stew. To maintain order, the brothel employs security. Usually, a large, grumpy mastiff who's paid with leftover bones and the right to sleep wherever he pleases. He's surprisingly effective, though not particularly picky. Let's be clear. In a medieval brothel, the idea of a bouncer conjures images of a muscular soldier with arms as big as logs and a scowl that could curdle milk. But here, the reality is both simpler and somehow more effective. The bouncer is a dog, not just any dog, but an ancient mastiff with the medieval flair for naming, Brutus. Brutus is as wide as a wheelbarrow, mostly muscle and fur with jowls that could make small children reconsider their career choices. He is the undisputed guardian of the entrance. If you're a newcomer, you meet Brutus before you meet anyone else. His job description is simple: nap in doorways, check pockets for snacks, and growl at anyone trying to leave without paying. Number: formal training, just centuries of instinct and an undying commitment to food. The moment the door opens and a rowdy customer stumbles in, Brutus performs a quick sniff inspection. This is medieval security clearance. Do you smell like trouble, sausage, or both? The madam insists that Brutus can detect a liar just by the twitch of their toes. There's even a rumor he once stopped a notorious thief with nothing more than a well-timed yawn. Most guests don't dare test him. Even the town's drunkest soldier will hesitate before challenging. 120 pounds of dog with a bite force strong enough to crush a soup bone. But if you're a regular, especially if you have a treat in your pocket, Brutus will let you pass with a resigned sniff. Inside, Brutus roams at his leisure, weaving between tables, sleeping wherever he's least wanted. If a fight breaks out, he doesn't bark. He simply waddles into the fray, positions himself between the combatants, and gives them a look of such deep disappointment that the argument usually dies down immediately. For particularly stubborn troublemakers, he'll escort them out with a gentle push of his considerable backside. The house rules apply to everyone, but Brutus enforces his own. No food left unattended. He'll claim it for investigation. No loud noises after dark, unless you want a frying pan-sized paw resting pointedly on your foot, and under no circumstances should anyone disturb his nap. One unfortunate merchant learnt this the hard way, and his shoe is still missing. Other security measures are more symbolic than functional. There's a wooden club behind the bar, mostly used for stirring soup. A rusty old sword hangs above. The doorway half as intimidating as Brutus' morning breath. For emergencies, the madam keeps a whistle, but most believe it's just to summon the dog for backup. The true brilliance of canine security, though, is psychological. Word spreads fast in a medieval town. Everyone knows the brothel is guarded by a beast who fears nothing except running out of bones. Petty thieves, jealous husbands, and even the occasional angry priest will think twice before causing trouble in a place where the bouncer drools on command. Of course, Brutus isn't perfect. He sometimes mistakes paying customers for delivery. Boys and once spent an entire afternoon guarding a ham instead of the door. His no-tolerance policy for cats is legendary. Still, he gets the job done and asks for little more than leftovers and a warm spot by the fire. So, if you're planning to visit, remember, don't try anything clever. Don't leave your stew unattended. And always, always greet the dog first. Because in this brothel, security may not be high-tech, but it's loyal, large, and always hungry. And honestly, Brutus is worth more than 3 guards, 2 locks, and 1 very nervous rooster. Sleep well if you can. The dogs guarding the door tonight. Brothels operate under a fluctuating mix of official tolerance, church disapproval, and occasional crackdowns. When the bailiff comes knocking, everyone suddenly forgets their name and tries to hide behind a curtain. Spoiler alert: there are no curtains. Life in a medieval brothel isn't just about keeping customers entertained and the soup unspoiled. It's also about playing a never-ending game of hide-and-seek with the law on any given week. You're never sure if the brothel is officially tolerated but frowned upon, a necessary evil, or the root of all sin that will soon be cleansed by fire and angry sermons. This means the house always runs on nerves, rumors, and at least 3 backup plans. The first and most important tool for legal survival: bribes. Lots of bribes. The madam keeps a stash of coins in a teapot, hidden inside. A larger teapot, concealed beneath a loose floorboard under the good rug. When the bailiff or town constable arrives for an inspection, the proper procedure is simple: offer a seat, pour a drink, and quietly slide a pouch of coins across the table. The conversation is always coded. Is the house in order tonight? Translation: is the bribe ready? We've done a thorough sweeping. Translation: take the money, please leave. But bribery alone doesn't guarantee peace. The church has its own set of rules and agents. Usually a priest with a face like a thundercloud who stops by to remind everyone of hell's fire, right before pocketing a little donation for the local orphanage, which happens to be run by his cousins. These visits require a performance. Workers cover up, customers look guilty, and someone starts a loud prayer just in case a neighbor is listening through the window. Guilt is the evening's dress code, and the air gets so thick with piety, you could cut it with a communion wafer, of course. Sometimes the authorities decide to stage a raid. Maybe the local bishop needs a political distraction, or the mayor's wife is feeling particularly virtuous. Word spreads fast. A nervous neighbor or a paid lookout dashes through the door, breathless with warnings. The response is utter chaos. Ale is spilled. Customers are pushed out the back door, and staff suddenly busy themselves with extremely innocent activities like scrubbing floors, mending socks, or reciting poetry to the goats. Everyone forgets their real names, and when in doubt, blames everything on Marjorie. There's always a Marjorie. Hiding evidence is an art form. Money is whisked away. The better wine disappears. And that suspicious pile of coins becomes a collection for the poor. The madam pulls out a ledger full of made-up entries. 2 dozen eggs, 1 bushel of apples, 3 barrels of disappointment. If the bailiff insists on inspecting the premises, he's met with Brutus, the dog, who has strong opinions about strangers with clipboards. If bluffing fails and someone gets hauled off for questioning, don't expect loyalty. Everyone has a story prepared, none of them matching. The key is to talk in circles until the officials are so confused they decide paperwork isn't worth the trouble. The record for the longest interrogation stands at 2 hours and ended with the bailiff buying drinks for the staff, none the wiser about anything. Still, the law can be unpredictable. Some nights, the brothel is simply ignored, considered too useful for visiting dignitaries or wealthy merchants who get lost on their way home from church. Other nights, it's the first target for a wave of moral outrage. There's never any warning, just a sudden tightening of the rules, a surge in fines, or a lot of loud sermons about sin that coincidentally align with tax collection. To get by, the brothel operates with one foot hidden in the shadows and one eye on the door. Everyone learns how to keep secrets, come up with new names, and plan a quick escape, just in case. There's always a friend of a friend on the town council, a cousin married to the night watchman, or a regular customer who happens to be the magistrate's nephew. Social connections act as the medieval insurance policy. Fragile, unreliable, but absolutely necessary. So, when the law comes knocking, don't panic. Put on your best innocent expression, remember your fake name, and pray the madam has the right bribe on hand. Because, in a medieval brothel, the line between what's legal and what's not is thin, flexible, and usually negotiable. And if all else fails, just blame Marjorie. It's not just angry husbands or rowdy drunks that pose a threat. Brothel life is a bingo card of medieval illnesses. There are no condoms, no antibiotics, and the best advice for a cough is drink more ale and try not to die. Let's face it, medieval brothel healthcare makes modern WebMD look like a 5-star spa. The house medic is usually the oldest worker, with the steadiest hands, a collection of homemade remedies, and an unshakable belief in the power of boiled onion. There's no such thing as a sterile environment, unless you count the time the madam tried to fumigate the place with burning sage, causing a coughing fit so intense it's now commemorated every year with a free round of ale. After your first night. The constant, inescapable presence of lice and fleas becomes apparent. They're not just hazards, they're part of the team. You're expected to pick them off like raisins from a loaf of bread. There are so many folk remedies being passed around that the kitchen sometimes smells like a salad. One day it's vinegar and garlic, the next it's a dash of salt behind the ears. For the truly desperate, you just keep scratching and hope for the best. Respiratory issues are as common as gossip. Every customer brings a fresh cloud of germs, and every cough is met with a moment of silent dread. If someone starts sneezing, the response is to pass the ale and light more candles, as though the flicker of tallow can scare off infection. There are no tissues, so sleeves become the medieval handkerchief, which works wonders for spreading colds and adding to the general odor of the place. Then, there are the specialty hazards, the types you only get in a place with this many visitors. And this little ventilation, syphilis, the pox, and a variety of rashes are all considered occupational risks. Treatments range from herbal tea and denial to rubbing a mysterious ointment on it and hoping it doesn't burn. The local apothecary does brisk business, selling potions with names like St. Agnes Purifying Tonic or Maid's Comfort, none of which actually work, but all of which taste like regret and turnip. Injuries are another common occurrence, a misplaced elbow, a jealous partner sneaking in through a window, or a customer who confused gentle affection with medieval wrestling. Bruises are the brothel's unofficial badge of honor, and a twisted ankle is just part of the job. For broken bones, the options are grim. You can ask the blacksmith's wife for a splint using leftover shoe leather, or just grit your teeth and hope the swelling goes down before the next shift. Meanwhile, the kitchen is its own minefield. Food poisoning is so routine, it's given nicknames like the pottage purges or the stale bread shuffle. There's no refrigeration, so you Eat what's served, chew slowly, and hope your stomach is as tough as your willpower. If not, you're sent to the yard with a bucket and the rooster for company. Water is highly questionable. The well out back is iffy, and the river is strictly for emergencies, like when the house is on fire. Most people drink weak ale or watered down wine to avoid the very real threat of dysentery. Even so, stomach cramps are an inevitable part of life. The proper thing is not to mention it. Just clutch your side and nod knowingly at the other sufferers. Let's not forget the mental toll sleep deprivation, anxiety, and the constant threat of arrest or eviction all add up to make stress its own form of medieval plague. There's no therapy, just gossip, prayer, and an extra serving of whatever passes for dessert on bad days. In the end, health in a medieval brothel is a mix of luck, resilience, and pretending you don't notice that strange rash spreading up your arm. You hope for the best, drink to forget, and if all else fails, you blame the goats. Because in a place where the only cure for any ailment is wait and see, every sunrise feels like a small miracle. Wages are paid nightly, and so are the debts. The madam takes her share, the bouncer gets his bone, and what's left barely covers a new pair of socks. The house always wins, especially when you owe rent. Now, let's dive into the harsh reality of brothel economics, where every copper coin is measured, counted, and mysteriously lighter than you remember. Each night's earnings are tallied with the grim precision of someone who knows exactly how far a single farthing can stretch. Spoiler, not very far. Workers line up after the night shift, bleary-eyed and hoping for good news, only to watch the madam's finger glide steadily down the ledger like a judge reading off charges. First, there's the house cut, an ancient tradition and possibly the earliest form of corporate overhead. The madam's percentage varies depending on her mood, the weather, and the current state of the roof. That leak in the corner, that'll be another 2%. There are deductions for broken crockery, lost linen, and once memorably, for emotional damage caused by the goat. Everyone grumbles, but the rules are the rules, and the madam is the only one with the key to the strongbox. Next up, Brutus the bouncer. He gets his payment in leftover stew bones and first choice of sleeping spots. But don't think for a second that this is the end of the expenses. Someone's always bribing him with a hunk of cheese to look the other way when sneaking an extra cup of ale. It's protection money, but fluffier now. Let's talk rent. If you think modern landlords are tough, try negotiating with a madam who's heard every excuse in the book and invented most of them herself. Your bed in the shared room, no matter how lumpy, costs a chunk of your earnings every week. Can't pay, you're assigned extra chores, or worse, forced to wear the communal tunic until someone else forgets to pay. What's left after deductions? Not much, maybe enough for a small luxury. Some threadbare socks from the market, a tart apple, or if you're feeling lucky, a sliver of questionable soap. Most workers stash their savings in the least obvious places, like inside an old boot sewn into the hem of a tunic or buried in the chicken coop. The goat, to this day, is suspected of running a shadow economy. If you're hoping for a raise, good luck. Negotiating higher wages in the medieval brothel is like asking for a window seat on a ship without windows. The answer is always the same: work harder or hope for rain. Some try to supplement their income by offering extras, fortune-telling, singing, or laundry services. But the madam takes a cut of those too, citing management fees. There's always someone in debt, usually. Several someones. A lost purse, a bad run at dice, or a fine for breaking house rules can spiral into a cycle of IOUs and whispered promises. The madam keeps careful track, her memory as sharp as her spoon. Debts can be paid off through extra shifts, errands run in the rain, or a night spent on chicken duty. Interest is never spoken of, but always implied. Meanwhile, the brothels. Expenses never sleep. There are bribes for the bailiff, donations to the church for forgiveness, plumbing repairs, and the ongoing cost of firewood, candles, and an endless supply of cheap ale. Somehow, even when the place is packed, and coins change hands with every wink and smile, the books always balance just in the house's favor. The madam says it's simple accounting. The workers call it magic or maybe just experience. In this world, money flows like ale quickly, and always with a little spillage. If you're wise, you'll hide a coin or two for a rainy day, though odds are the madam will find it before you do. In the end, it's not about getting rich. It's about surviving to payday, laughing at your empty purse, and knowing that while the house always wins, at least you're still in the game. So next time you hear someone say, "Follow the money," remember, in the medieval brothel, all roads lead right back to the madam's strongbox. The house always wins, and the goat, of course, gets his cut. When business is slow, entertainment ranges from drunken singing to extremely low-budget puppet shows. On a good night, someone finds a lute. On a bad night, someone tries to juggle knives. Nobody wins. Let's set the mood. Picture it. The candles are burning low. Customers are counting their last few coins. And even Brutus, the dog, has fallen asleep by the fire, snoring louder than anyone thought possible. There's a lull in the action, a dangerous thing in a place built on distraction. That's when the show begins. In a world before streaming, the brothel's main form of entertainment is whatever can be cobbled together from the available talent, objects, and occasionally farm animals. First, the singing. It's never planned. Someone just stands up, usually after their third cup of ale, and belts out a tune about lost love, a cheating merchant, or the world's most famous goat. The audience joins in, whether they know the words or not, and harmonies are achieved entirely by accident. The brothel's best singer is usually one of the cooks, who claims she once performed for a baron, though evidence is thin and memory's thinner. She's known for a voice that can cut through the thickest soup fog and a habit of changing lyrics on the fly to poke fun at the clientele. If music isn't enough, it's time for the puppet show. The props are always handmade socks with button eyes, straw dolls, and the occasional turnip with a painted face. The stories are loosely based on actual events. Usually, the latest town scandal were told with extra slapstick and questionable accuracy. If you're the target of tonight's play, expect to be mercilessly roasted and then handed a wooden spoon as a consolation prize. The crowd loves it, especially after enough ale. And nobody takes offense, at least not until tomorrow morning. Then there's the infamous juggling. In theory, it's meant to wow the crowd. In practice, it's an exercise in dodging flying objects. Most of the time, the juggler is just a bored farmhand who's had too much to drink and decided to show off by tossing candlesticks, bread rolls, or, if things get desperate, a mildly annoyed chicken. The results range from accidental slapstick to genuine chaos. The dog has learned to hide under the table whenever someone yells catch. Games are another staple. There's dice, of course, always loaded, always contested. Card games that have no written rules, and at least 3 possible winners per round. Occasionally, Someone organizes a guessing game. What's that smell? Is a house favorite, though nobody has ever truly won. If a guest claims to be from out of town, they're drafted into telling stories, real or imagined, about lands where people bathe twice a week and bread comes pre-sliced on rare occasions. Someone unearths a lute or a battered drum, and the entire house is treated to a real concert. The music is enthusiastic, if not always in tune, and everyone claps along, except Brutus, who howls until he's let outside. Dancing breaks out, often more comic than graceful, with partners swapped and steps invented on the spot. It's communal, chaotic, and surprisingly joyful. Nobody cares about skill. What matters is making noise and forgetting your worries for a few precious minutes. Not all entertainment is so wholesome. Sometimes it's just gossip hour. Stories swapped, secrets spilled, and the latest scandal dissected with more detail than the local apothecary puts into his potions. A new rumor can travel from the kitchen to the front door in under 5 minutes. By the end of the night, everyone's heard 3 different versions, all more dramatic than the last dot. When things really slow down, entertainment takes a philosophical turn. Someone might debate whether turnips are better than carrots, or if the bishop's nephew is truly as pious as he claims. These debates end when someone brings out the last of the ale, or the goat interrupts with his own opinion, usually expressed by eating the evidence. So, while the world outside dreams of feasts and tournaments, the medieval brothel keeps spirits up with its own brand of chaos and creativity. Laughter is the house's real currency, and everyone leaves with a story, if not a bruise from a stray bread roll. Welcome to medieval Netflix. Low budget, high drama, and always on. Forget the town crier. The brothel grapevine is the fastest in town. Scandalous secrets, royal affairs, and the latest bout of food poisoning all make the rounds before dawn. Welcome to Gossip Central, where information flows faster than ale, and the walls have ears, plus noses, and occasionally a tail if Brutus the bouncer is snoozing nearby. In the medieval brothel, nothing is private for long. The kitchen staff knows everything before breakfast. The madam knows it before you've even decided to tell her, and by sunset, even the goat is caught up on the latest scandal. If you thought your hometown was bad for rumors, you've never met Marjorie, who's got both the sharpest tongue and the best memory east of the city gate. Every night, there's always someone whispering in a corner, pretending to polish cutlery, but really passing along the juiciest tidbit they overheard behind the curtain. News spreads quickly from table to table. A merchant's bankruptcy, a knight's embarrassing rash, the mayor's latest secret visit, which is only secret because he insists on wearing a disguise that fools no one. By midnight, the story has been altered 3 times, gaining several fictional details, usually to make it more amusing or more incriminating. If someone sneezes twice at dinner, it's a full-fledged plague by morning, and the entire neighborhood is downing garlic in self-defense. There are no limits to the brothel grapevine. No one is too important to escape its reach. Not the priest who claims he's there to save souls, not the bailiff who drops by during the dinner rush, and certainly not the madam herself. In fact, half the fun is seeing who can spin the best version of the day's events without getting caught. Even customers join in. Travelers trade stories for soup. And if you want an extra ladle, you'd better have a rumor to offer. Foreign merchants always attract attention. Are they really just here for the market fair? Or is that satchel full of gold coins, or something even more suspicious, like actual pepper? The morning after is an unofficial news briefing. Everyone gathers around the hearth, clutching pieces of bread, eager for updates. Someone always knows a friend who swears they saw the town thief running from a chicken or the bishop dancing in the square after curfew. The stories grow with each retelling. The truth is flexible in the brothel, and no one wants to spoil a good story with dull facts. Occasionally, gossip takes on a life of its own, snowballing into something the whole town can't ignore. A single overheard argument turns into a brewing feud between rival merchants. A harmless flirtation becomes a forbidden love affair, and someone's unfortunate food poisoning turns into a dire warning about the cook's stew. Though everyone still eats it, hunger always trumps caution. The brothel's real information network, though, is its staff. Each has a role. The kitchen maid overhears everything from the garden. The night shift picks up secrets whispered in the dark. And the laundry worker is practically a spy, sorting through the evidence of who wore what and where. The madam is the final authority, filtering rumors for leverage or amusement, using them when needed to settle disputes, discourage bad behavior, or simply entertain herself. Woe to anyone who tries to keep a secret here. The brothel is a living, breathing rumor mill, and the only safe secrets are the ones you never speak. Even the animals are involved. A missing egg means grand theft. A wandering rooster starts accusations of sabotage. And Brutus's favorite napping spot is a treasure trove of overheard half-truths. In a world without newspapers, social media, or even reliable mail, gossip is the real heartbeat of the brothel and the whole town. It's how alliances are made, enemies are warned, and reputations are built or destroyed in a matter of hours. So if you've got something to hide, keep your head low, your mouth shut, and your story straight. Because here, news travels at the speed of gossip, and everyone is waiting for the next headline. Every worker here juggles personal faith with a job that the local priest condemns every Sunday. Some pray before bed, some after, and some just hope they won't be recognized at church. Let's set the stage. In medieval Europe, faith wasn't just for Sundays. It was the constant background of daily life, the air you breathe, and sometimes the only thing standing between you and eternal punishment. For brothel workers, this means living every day on the theological edge, trying to keep one foot in heaven while the other is suspiciously close to the flames. The local priest is both a regular visitor checking on your souls and the loudest critic from the pulpit. Every Sunday sermon ends with a thundering condemnation of sin, temptation, and the den of iniquity on the outskirts of town. There's always a subtle glance at Marjorie, who stares straight ahead, clutching her prayer book and trying not to look like someone who spent the night hiding a nobleman in the linen cupboard. Prayer is a daily balancing act. Some workers kneel before bed, reciting the same prayers their mothers taught them, asking forgiveness for what I'm about to do, what I did, and whatever I'll forget to mention. Others light a candle at the shrine in the corner of the room, hoping the Virgin Mary is too busy elsewhere to check the guest list. Still others just mutter a quick sorry under their breath and promise to do better after payday. Church attendance is expected. After all, appearances must be maintained. The church is the center of social life, the only place where even the brothel's most infamous faces can blend in for an hour. Some wear their finest and only dress, heads covered and eyes downcast, hoping the priest doesn't recognize their shoes from the previous night. A few risk singing in the choir, figuring nothing says repentant, like a well-hit high note. But religious guilt is more than public shaming and anxious prayers. It's woven into every interaction, every glance from a passing nun, every whispered rumor about the curse of a sinful life. The staff swap horror stories about pious relatives and dreams of hellish punishment. The madam, pragmatic as always, insists that God helps those who help themselves, and that includes tipping the cook. Confession is a strategic exercise. No one wants to be too specific. Sins are described in vague terms. I was less than virtuous, or I spent time with questionable company. The priest listens, sighs, and hands out penance. Sometimes so many prayers that workers suspect he's just trying to boost church attendance. After all, every Hail Mary is a minute spent not worrying about the house stew. But faith isn't just a burden, it's also a comfort. In a world where tomorrow is never guaranteed, and a bad winter could mean starvation, hope is currency. Workers pray for health, safety, and that the town guard will get lost on the way home. Every lucky streak, no injuries, no raids, an extra coin from a grateful guest, is seen as a little miracle. Proof that someone up there is still listening, even if only out of curiosity. Some clergy are more understanding than others. The occasional visiting friar will pause on his way out, slip a loaf of bread to the kitchen, and whisper, "We're all sinners, but at least you make the world interesting." It's the kind of blessing you don't write home about, but it softens the edge of guilt just the same. So, as you lie in bed, staring at the flickering candle, and debating whether to add another prayer for good measure, you realize that faith and survival have always gone hand in hand. Here, in the brothel, the only real sin is forgetting to hope. Because even in a world of whispered shame and second chances, everyone's looking for redemption or at least a little mercy before the rooster crows. Sometimes the brothel receives visitors less interested in pleasure and more in eavesdropping, blackmail, or recruiting for questionable crusades. These are the nights when everyone pretends to be asleep. If you think a brothel's only concern is rowdy customers and the occasional runaway goat, think again. The real tension begins when a certain type of guest slips through the door, sharply dressed, eyes darting, hands suspiciously clean. You know instantly that these are not the usual crowd here for a bowl of pottage and a bad decision. No, these are the unwanted guests, nobles on a secret mission, spies with nothing to lose, and political schemers whose idea of a wild night is collecting blackmail material for later. Let's start with the nobles. They arrive in disguise, or so they think. Just a humble merchant, says the man whose boots cost more than the whole establishment. He's nervous, clutching his purse and watching every shadow. He's not here for pleasure. He's here to catch someone else in the act. Maybe it's a rival, a rebellious cousin, or even his own son. Nobles use the brothel like a chessboard, moving pieces around for advantage. If the madam is lucky, she gets a hefty tip to forget the noble was ever there. Every shift, someone is whispering in a corner, pretending to clean silverware while actually sharing the latest gossip they overheard behind the curtain. News moves quickly from one table to another. A merchant's financial ruin, a knight's embarrassing rash, the mayor's latest covert visit, which is only a secret because his disguise fools no one. By midnight, the story has already changed 3 times and gathered a few more exaggerated details, usually making it funnier or even more scandalous. If someone sneezes twice during dinner, by morning it's a full-blown plague, and the whole neighborhood starts drinking garlic as protection. There are no boundaries to the brothels. Grapevine. No one is too important to escape its reach. Not the priest who claims he's there to save souls. Not the bailiff who happens to stop by during dinner, and certainly not the madam herself. In fact, half the fun is seeing who can spin the best version of the day's events without being caught. Even the customers get involved. Travelers trade stories for their soup. And if you want an extra ladle, you'd better come prepared with a juicy rumor. Foreign merchants are always a hot topic. Are they really just here for the market fair? Or is that bag full of gold coins, or something even more suspicious, like genuine pepper? The morning after is an unofficial press conference. Everyone gathers around the hearth, holding bits of bread, eagerly awaiting the updates. Someone always knows someone who swears they saw the town thief running away from a chicken, or the bishop dancing in the square after curfew. The tales are shared and retold, getting more dramatic with each telling. The truth is flexible in the brothel, and no one really wants to spoil a good story with boring facts. Sometimes, the gossip takes on a life of its own, snowballing into something the entire town can't ignore. A simple argument turns into a feud between rival merchants, a harmless flirtation becomes a forbidden love affair, and someone's unfortunate food poisoning transforms into a dire warning about the cook's stew. Even though everyone continues to eat it, hunger always wins. Over caution, the brothel's real information network is its staff. Each one has their role. The kitchen maid overhears everything from the garden. The night shift catches secrets whispered in the dark. The laundry worker is practically a spy, sorting through evidence of who wore what and where. The madam is the ultimate authority, filtering rumors for leverage or amusement, using them when necessary to settle disputes, discourage bad behavior, or simply entertain herself. Woe to anyone who tries to keep a secret here. The brothel is a living, breathing rumor mill, and the only safe secrets are the ones you never say out loud. Even the animals are involved. A missing egg becomes a grand theft. A wandering rooster causes accusations of sabotage. And Brutus' favorite napping spot is a treasure trove of overheard half-truths. In a world without newspapers, social media, or reliable mail, gossip is the heartbeat of the brothel and the town. It's how alliances are made, enemies are warned, and reputations are created or destroyed overnight. So, if you've got something to hide, keep your head down, your mouth shut, and your story straight. Because here, news travels fast, and everyone's listening for the next big story. Every worker here balances personal faith with a job that's condemned every Sunday by the local priest. Some pray before bed, some after, and some just hope they won't be recognized at church. Let's set the scene. In medieval Europe, faith wasn't just for Sundays. It was the background to everyday life, the air you breathed, and sometimes the only thing keeping you from eternal punishment. For brothel workers, this meant living each day on the theological edge, trying to keep one foot in heaven while the other teetered dangerously close to the flames. The local priest is a regular visitor, just checking on your souls, but also the loudest critic from the pulpit. Every Sunday, his sermon ends with a thunderous condemnation of sin, temptation, and the brothel on the edge of town. There's always a subtle glance toward Marjorie, who stares straight ahead, clutching her prayer book and trying not to look, like someone who spent last night hiding a nobleman in the linen cupboard. Prayer is a daily balancing act. Some workers kneel before bed, reciting the same prayers their mothers taught them, asking forgiveness for what I'm about to do, what I did, and whatever I forget to mention. Others light a candle at the shrine in the corner of the room, hoping the Virgin Mary is too busy elsewhere to check the guest list. Still others just mutter a quick sorry under their breath and promise to do better after payday. Church attendance is expected. After all, appearances must be maintained. The church is the center of social life, the only place where even the brothel's most infamous faces can blend in for an hour. Some wear their best and only dress, heads covered and eyes downcast, hoping the priest doesn't recognize their shoes from the previous night. A few risk singing in the choir, figuring that nothing says repentant like a well-hit high note. But religious guilt is more than public shaming and anxious prayers. It's woven into every interaction, every glance from a passing nun, every whispered rumor about a sinful life. The staff share horror stories about pious relatives and nightmares of hellish punishment. The madam, ever pragmatic, insists that God helps those who help themselves, and that includes tipping the cook. Confession is strategic. No one wants to be too specific. Sins are described in vague terms. I was less than virtuous, or I spent time with questionable company. The priest listens, sighs, and hands out penance. Sometimes so many prayers that workers suspect he's just trying to boost church attendance. After all, every Hail Mary is a minute not spent worrying about the house stew. But faith isn't just a burden, it's also a comfort. In a world where tomorrow isn't guaranteed, and a bad winter could mean starvation, hope is valuable. Workers pray for health, safety, and that the town guard will get lost on the way home. Every lucky streak, no injuries, no raids, an extra coin from a grateful guest, is seen as a little miracle. Proof that someone up there is still listening, even if only out of curiosity. Some clergy are more understanding than others. The occasional visiting friar will pause on his way out, slip a loaf of bread to the kitchen, and whisper, "We're all sinners, but at least you make the world interesting." It's the kind of blessing you don't write home about, but it softens the edge of guilt just the same. So, as you lie in bed staring at the flickering candle and debating whether to add another prayer for good measure, you realize that faith and survival have always gone hand in hand. Here in the brothel, the only real sin is forgetting to hope. Because even in a world of whispered shame and second chances, everyone's looking for redemption or at least a little mercy before the rooster crows. Sometimes, the brothel receives visitors less interested in pleasure and more in eavesdropping, blackmail, or recruiting for questionable crusades. These are the nights when everyone pretends to be asleep. If you think a brothel's only worry is rowdy customers and the occasional runaway goat, think again. The real tension starts when a certain type of guest slips through the door, sharply, dressed, eyes darting, hands suspiciously clean. You know instantly that these are not the usual crowd here for a bowl of pottage and a bad decision. No, these are the unwanted guests, nobles on a secret mission, spies with nothing to lose, and political schemers whose idea of a wild night is collecting blackmail material for later. Let's start with the nobles. They arrive in disguise, or so they think. Just a humble merchant, says the man whose boots cost more than the entire brothel. He's nervous, clutching his purse and watching every shadow. He's not here for pleasure. He's here to catch someone else in the act. Maybe it's a rival, a rebellious cousin, or even his own son. Nobles use the brothel like a chessboard, moving pieces around for advantage. If the madam is lucky, she gets a hefty tip to forget the noble was ever there. Laces get tangled in hair, catch on furniture, and occasionally form a plot to completely ruin your outfit with one wrong move. Accidental reveals or nightly incidents are often met with laughter, understanding applause, or if the timing is especially unfortunate, a hasty dash behind the nearest screen. Spoiler alert, there are never enough screens. The brothel handyman is a local legend, a mixture of a torturer, magician, and saint, equipped with a range of needles, tough thread, and the patience of someone who's seen it all. He spends his evenings fixing elbows, repairing seams, and solving knots that seem more like ancient sailors' puzzles than wearable fashion. He's also the unofficial keeper of spare laces, which are a priceless currency when yours inevitably snap before a busy night. Sometimes the issues are small, like a shift that slips a bit too low, a stocking that refuses to stay up, or a petticoat that threatens to migrate every time you sneeze. Other times, it's complete chaos. Laces unravel at the worst times, sending sleeves flying and skirts collapsing. There's the famous incident of the great trousers mishap, where a new apprentice, eager to impress, found herself tripped up and landed headfirst in the communal stew. Her dignity survived, but her shoes didn't. Customers aren't immune either. After a few rounds of ale, more than one guest has found themselves hopelessly tangled, requiring a rescue from a worker trying very hard not to laugh. There are also those who love to show off, claiming they can untie anything with one hand. They rarely succeed, ending up red-faced, wrestling with a stubborn bodice, while the room places bets on whether the laces or their patience will give out first. Everyone develops their own ways of coping. Some workers prate our tricky knots before their shifts. Others swear by lucky laces, often just the strongest piece of string available. More experienced workers have mastered the art of the quick change, ducking behind a carefully placed screen, and emerging moments later, fully reassembled, hair and composure mostly intact. Despite the nightly madness, there's a sense of camaraderie in the wardrobe struggles. Helping a friend lace up, swap tunics, or recover from a catastrophic slip is just another part of life hero ritual, as familiar as counting coins or dodging Brutus the dog. Laughter, eye rolls, and the occasional brag about going a whole week without a wardrobe malfunction are what keep the place together, even when the clothes don't sew. If you ever find yourself in a medieval brothel, remember, never underestimate a humble lace. Always befriend the handyman, and know that modesty is optional, but a sense of humor is absolutely essential. Not everyone here is above a little side hustle. Keep an eye on your purse, your shoes, and your breakfast. If something goes missing, check under the dog. The medieval brothel is not a place for the naive or trusting. It's a chaotic blend of opportunity, desperation, and, let's face it, sticky fingers. The only thing more common than a bad cold is the sudden disappearance of whatever you foolishly left unattended. Everyone has their angle in a place filled with low wages, high debts, and too many mouths to feed. A little creative redistribution of wealth is just part of the nightly routine. First rule of survival: guard your purse like it's made of gold, even if it only contains a single copper and a button you swear will be lucky one day. The moment you turn your back, that purse could grow legs and walk off on its own. Most workers tie their money bags to their waists, hide them under a second layer of clothing, and then sit on them for good measure. There are stories about a legendary thief who once managed to steal a coin pouch tied around a customer's neck while he was still awake. Shoes are another hot commodity. You'd think nobody would bother with a pair of battered boots that smell like last week's cottage. But in the brothel, footwear is as valuable as currency. A decent pair can be sold, traded, or, if you're lucky, used as a bribe to avoid kitchen duty. The cleverest thieves swap out shoes with ones a size too small, leaving the original owner to wonder if they've suddenly grown or if they've been the victim of the world's least satisfying con. Breakfast is never truly safe either. That last piece of bread you stashed for later, gone. The bitter cheese you tucked behind the jug, vanished. Even the hardiest eggs have been known to disappear between the kitchen and the table, spirited away by someone with nimble fingers and a desperate stomach. There's a running joke that if you ever find an extra piece of meat in your cottage, it's probably been stolen and returned twice before it got to you. The real trick is knowing where to look when things go missing. Under the straw mattress, of course. Tucked inside a pillowcase, naturally. But if you're clever, you always check under Brutus, the dog. The brothel's bouncer has a knack for sleeping on top of the most valuable loot. Whether it's a half sausage or a customer's missing sock, he doesn't care who owns it. If it's soft, tasty, or smells interesting, it's his dot. Now, of course, not all the thieves are professionals. Some are just hungry, desperate, or bored. There are small-time hustlers who trade stolen apples for gossip, and pickpockets who'd rather snatch a handkerchief than risk a real fight. The madam, always one step ahead, keeps a lost and found box behind the bar filled with everything from rings to mismatched gloves to a mysterious jar of pickled onions that nobody dares claim. When something important vanishes, there's a search, part scavenger hunt, part blame game. Accusations fly, alliances form and dissolve, and the actual thief usually joins in the hunt just to keep suspicion off themselves. The seasoned workers know that the real trick isn't just not getting caught, it's not getting caught twice in one night. Repeat offenders are put on latrine duty or forced to tell the madam's least favorite bedtime story to Brutus, who listens intently and then falls asleep on their feet. Petty crime is woven into the fabric of brothel life. It's the source of countless arguments, inside jokes, and creative solutions. After all, if you can't find your breakfast, maybe you borrow someone else's. If your only clean shirt is missing, try the laundry pile. Just hope you don't grab something belonging to the cook. And when all else fails, shrug, laugh, and move on. In the end, what goes around comes around, usually in the form of someone else's missing sock. So, if you're new to the medieval brothel, remember, trust no one, label everything, and always keep an eye on Brutus. Because in a house of thieves among thieves, the only true crime is leaving your breakfast unguarded in the medieval brothel. Animals serve as bed warmers, burglar alarms, and occasional emergency food. They're also remarkably opinionated about your singing voice. Let's be honest, when you imagine sharing a room in a brothel, your first worry probably isn't, will a goat eat my pillow? But here, in the ever-surprising world of medieval hospitality, animals are as much a part of brothel life as drafty windows and mysterious stains. The house is a bustling menagerie where dogs, cats, chickens, and of course, the infamous goat are not so much guests as unruly four-legged staff members. Take the goat, for example. He's not named because everyone agrees that would give him too much power. He roams the brothel with the entitlement of a landlord who's months behind on repairs. His resume includes bed warmer, whether you want him or not, burglar deterrent, and culinary emergency backup. No one mentions this within earshot, just in case he understands common. He has a taste for tunic hems, bread crusts, and any unattended laundry. Leave your blanket on the floor and it's his by midnight. Try to sing off-key and you'll get a bleat so judgmental, it might as well come with a performance review. The chickens are next on the list of animal roommates. Technically, they're supposed to stay outside, but try explaining boundaries to a bird that survived 3 winters and a minor kitchen fire. They're the brothel's built-in alarm system, squawking at every unfamiliar footstep and occasionally launching themselves into bed to warm up. Eggs are a treat if you find one before the goat does, and feathers in your hair are a nightly inevitability. If you're really unlucky, a chicken will decide your chest is the perfect roost at 3 o'clock in the morning, leaving you with a heart rate worthy of a night in battle. Then there's Brutus, the house dog and bouncer. As much a roommate as a bodyguard, Brutus picks his sleeping spot based on the prime real estate. Wherever the floor is warmest, or wherever someone just left food unattended. If he decides you're his favorite, you might get to share your straw. Matt with 120 pounds of drooling, snoring loyalty. Just hope he's not in one of his protective moods, or you'll be trapped until dawn. Held hostage by a paw the size of a hammock. Don't forget the cats. Every brothel has at least one, often more, slinking in and out through windows, catching mice and stealing the choicest scraps from the kitchen. They keep the rodent population down somewhat, and everyone quietly hopes the local priest won't notice them and start muttering about witches again. Cats are less judgmental than goats, but more selective. They'll only curl up with you if you've had a particularly bad day, or if you're wearing something black. Animal roommates add a certain unpredictability to life. You learn to check your shoes for surprises, guard your breakfast with one hand, and never, ever leave anything edible within a goat's line of sight. Sometimes you're woken not by the dawn, but by a heated turf war between a rooster and a mouse, both of whom consider themselves senior staff. It's not exactly restful, but the house is never dull. On the upside, animals provide comfort. Their warmth is real on winter nights, their antics a source of endless entertainment, and their unconditional presence a strange kind of companionship in a world where trust is a precious commodity. The goat might chew your cloak, but he'll also chase off strangers. Brutus might steal your pillow, but he'll snarl at anyone who threatens you. The chickens might break the silence, but at least you'll never sleep through a fire, so if you're settling in for another unpredictable night, tuck your socks under your head, keep one eye on your breakfast, and remember, in the medieval brothel, your animal roommates aren't pets. They're survivors, comedians, and sometimes the best friends you never ask for. Don't expect them to respect your privacy or your singing. After one night, you'll already be plotting your escape. Whether it's marrying a customer, running away with the lute player, or simply hiding in a barrel until spring, every plan seems more plausible after spending a night here. Welcome to the morning after, when the cottage still tastes suspicious, the bruises are fresh, and you've spent another sleepless hour listening to the goat critique your snoring. Your priorities have shifted. You no longer dream of wealth or love, just a swift exit with both shoes on and your dignity intact. The desire to escape is as old as the brothel itself, and you'll soon discover that everyone here has at least one crazy plan simmering beneath the surface. First is the marriage strategy. Perhaps you're hoping a wealthy customer will fall madly in love, blind to the lice, the questionable food, and the fact that your finest dress has been worn by at least 3 other people. The brothel is filled with whispered tales of workers who married a merchant and disappeared to a better life. Of course, no one knows where they ended up. Rumor has it, most just moved a couple of streets away and started another business. Still, you practice your best smile, adjust your patchwork tunic, and remind yourself that miracles happen, just maybe not here. Then there's the romantic getaway with the lute player. It always seems possible late at night when the candlelight is soft and the music almost drowns out the coughing from the next room. Lute players with their dreamy eyes and wandering hands are the medieval equivalent of rock stars, irresistible and utterly unreliable. Still, you can't help but picture yourself running off to join a traveling troupe until you remember they sleep in carts, eat even worse, stew, and have a suspiciously high turnover rate for lutes. For those less interested in romance and more focused on sheer survival, there's always the classic hide until the coast is clear technique. Barrels, lofts, and even the laundry basket have all been pressed into service by would-be escapees. One worker once spent an entire afternoon wedged behind the ale casks, only to be discovered when the goat took an unusual interest in the situation. Others tried blending in with the morning delivery crew or faking an illness so convincingly that even the madam starts to worry, though not enough to let you skip your shift. There's also the dream of finding another trade, baking, weaving, or maybe becoming an apprentice to the local apothecary. But you quickly realize it's just more pottage, only with extra herbs and fewer tips. Leaving is harder than it sounds. Life in the brothel is a strange mix of comfort and chaos. You know the rules, however ridiculous, and at least the animals are predictable. The outside world, however, is full of dangers. Highwaymen, starvation, or worst of all, encountering the priest who knows exactly where you've been. The most ambitious escape plans are often group efforts. The idea goes something like this: let's pool our money, leave at midnight, and head for the next town. Inevitably, the plan falls apart after the first round of ale. Someone remembers they can't leave without their shoes. Someone else confesses their secret love for Brutus the dog, and a third can't bear to part with the kitchen's only sharp knife. There's even a running joke about the secret tunnel under the brothel, supposedly leading to freedom or the neighbor's pigsty, depending on who you ask. Everyone pretends to believe in it, especially the madam, who likes to keep hope alive, just enough to prevent a real mutiny. Yet, for all the scheming and daydreaming, most workers stay. The brothel, for all its faults, is a known chaos. It's a place where, against all odds, you survive another night and somehow find a way to laugh about it in the morning. Besides, the goat gets lonely if you're gone too long, and no one else knows how to tie the curtains just right. So, as you either nestle near the barrel, practice your innocent traveler face, or plan your next escape with the lute player, remember that sometimes surviving here is an escape in itself. And if you ever do make it out, try not to look back unless, of course, you left your shoes under Brutus again. Finally, every brothel has its share of ghost stories, usually about a former customer who didn't pay or a lovesick monk who never left. If you hear whispering in the night, it's either a ghost or just the rats holding a council meeting. It's late, the candles are flickering, and the ale is running low. This is when the real stories begin, the kind that make you tuck your feet closer and glance nervously at the curtain fluttering in the draught. In a place where sleep is always in short supply and strange noises are common, it's no wonder every brothel develops its own catalogue of supernatural occurrences. The most famous tale is about the unpaid guest. He's described in different ways, sometimes a swaggering merchant, sometimes a bashful farm boy, sometimes a nobleman who thought he could skip out on his bill. The details change with each telling, but the ending never does. He vanishes into the night, owing silver, and is cursed to wander the halls forever, rattling his empty purse and sighing about a misunderstanding with the madam. Some say you can still hear the faint jingle of his coins on stormy nights, or spot a shadowy figure near the chamber pot, forever searching for a lost boot. Then there's the tale of the lovesick monk who visited for a bowl of stew and never left. The story goes that he fell so hopelessly in love with a worker named Marjorie. There's always a Marjorie. That he lingers still, whispering prayers and sweet nothings from the dark corners. He's blamed for every unexplained draught, flickering candle, and missing loaf of bread. If you ever feel your blanket tugged just as you're drifting off, it's probably not the goat this time, midst the lovesick ghost making sure no one gets a full night's sleep. Other spirits are less sentimental. The weeping lady is said to haunt the attic, eternally mourning a lost romance, or maybe just her last paycheck. Workers say she appears only on the coldest nights, bringing with her a chill so sharp it freezes the morning pottage. No one goes to the attic alone, and if the cat hisses at the ceiling, everyone decides it's a good night to sleep downstairs. Then there are the mischievous poltergeists, blamed for every wardrobe malfunction. Missing socks and unexplained puddles on the floor. Some swear the spirits play trick-switching shoes, moving coins, or hiding the key to the strongbox just as the madam goes to count the night's earnings. The cook claims her best ladle is cursed, always turning up in the strangest places under the dog, wedged in a bed frame, or even in the stew itself. Not every haunting is scary. Some of the brothel's ghosts are just tales to explain away the more peculiar realities of brothel life. Mysterious stains, creaky floorboards, and the odd persistent scent of turnips where there should be none. When the house gets too quiet, someone will tap on a wall or drop a coin just to keep up appearances and maybe spook a newcomer for fun, of course. The rats are real enough. They're not ghosts, just ambitious tenants who treat the brothel like their personal kingdom. If you hear whispering in the night, it might be the council of rats debating who gets the choicest crumbs, or plotting to overthrow Brutus as the true master of the house. In the morning, their tiny footprints across the floor prove that, supernatural or not, something's always awake before you. Despite the chills and late-night scares, the ghost stories are oddly comforting. They're part of the brothel's shared lore, a way to laugh off the unexplainable, bond over a good fright, and keep hope alive that if you stick around long enough, you too might become a legend. So, as you settle into your haunted bed, listening to the sounds of the old house creaking and the rats whispering about unionizing, just remember, every brothel has its ghosts. Surviving the living is the real trick. Birthdays in the brothel are a rare luxury, mostly an excuse for a slightly bigger slice of bread and a cup of special ale. That's just the usual stuff with a wilted sprig of mint. The lucky birthday worker is celebrated with a hand-sewn crown recycled from last year's maple, a song so off-key the goat howls along, and a small parade around the common room. The madam delivers a rousing speech. Brutus, the dog, sniffs for contraband cake, and someone inevitably tells a story about that one time the mayor tried to jump out the window. It's chaotic, heartfelt, and over before you know it. But for one night, even the draftiest room feels a little warmer, if not any cleaner. Birthdays, of course, are never celebrated on the actual day. Nobody knows exactly when they were born, only that it was cold, or there was a fair, or the chickens laid 2 eggs instead of 1. The date is chosen democratically, meaning whichever evening someone remembers to mention it, or whenever spirits are low and everyone needs an excuse to pause for something almost like joy. Preparations for a brothel birthday begin in secret and end in uproar. Someone is tasked with baking a cake, which in brothel terms means finding the least stale loaf, dusting it with flour, and sticking a candle or a slightly singed twig on top. The kitchen staff always up for a challenge. Try to locate a raisin, or failing that, just carve a smiley face into the bread with a blunt knife. Rumor has it the birthday cake once contained an actual currant, but that might just be legend. Nobody's been able to prove it, and the only witness is the goat. The birthday crown is another traditioner, tangled loop of ribbons, bread crusts, and whatever wildflowers the apprentices managed to swipe from the neighbor's garden. It's ceremoniously placed on the guest of honor's head, sometimes accompanied by a polite round of applause and a less polite comment about how well it hides the lice. The crown rarely fits, usually tilts, and sometimes causes the dog to bark with suspicion. When the time comes, the whole house gathers: workers, customers, the madam, the animals, and anyone else who happened to wander in looking for warmth or a spare cup of ale. The madam gives her annual speech, which is equal parts affectionate roast and rousing call to arms. May you age better than last week's pottage. May your purse grow fuller, and may you always stay one step ahead of the authorities. This is followed by a group rendition of the birthday song, an original melody performed by the house with impromptu lyrics and harmonies that could only come from those who never quite learned how to sing. No birthday celebration would be complete without a round of questionable party games. There's the pin, the tail on the goat, a high-stakes, low-reward relay race with ale mugs, several wardrobe mishaps, and the well-known guess who ate the last apple. The prizes are typically practical: a patched-up sock, a bit of twine, or the privilege of not having to clean the privy for the day. Occasionally, the madam digs out a forgotten treasure from the prize box, which could range from a chipped comb to a mysterious key that hasn't been identified since 1349. As the evening rolls on, the stories begin. Each worker has their own favorite birthday anecdote, most of which end with, and then the candles set the tablecloth ablaze. One memorable tale recalls the time the mayor, in disguise, joined the party, tried to dance the hornpipe, and almost escaped out the window, but was foiled by his own velvet pants. Laughter fills the air, customers cheer, and for a brief moment, the daily grind of brothel life turns into something resembling a genuine celebration. Even Brutus the dog joins in, wandering from lap to lap in search of cake scraps, pausing only to give the birthday worker a nuzzle and leave behind a gift of suspiciously wet affection. The goat, always craving attention, attempts to eat the crown, but is rewarded with an extra turnip, unless he snatches it himself. As the candles burn out and the mint in the ale fades beyond recognition, the party begins to wind down. There's cleaning to be done, guests to escort, and another long night ahead. But for that one evening, everyone feels appreciated, celebrated, and part of something just a little brighter than the usual chaos. The crown is put away, the last morsel of cake eaten, and the stories are added to the brothel's ever-growing legend. Birthdays here are brief, chaotic, but never forgotten. In a world where celebrations are rare, even the smallest cake and silliest crown can make a cold, drafty room feel a bit like home. Now and then, a distant relative or well-meaning sibling arrives at the brothel's door, holding a bag of laundry and a head full of questions. Cue the panic. Workers quickly swap names, invent respectable occupations. Yes, I'm the town's official candle tester. And pray the madam's icy glare doesn't chase Aunt Agnes away before she hands over the promised pie. The visit becomes a careful dance of half-truths and awkward laughter, with everyone on their best behavior until the relatives leave, or, worse, decide to stay for dinner. Afterward, the workers collapse in relief, silently thankful that nobody asked to see the guest book. Let's set the scene. There's a strange knock at the door, a sound unfamiliar to the usual bustle. Not the confident rap of a customer or the quiet tap of the town guard. No, this is the hesitant double knock of family, the kind that says, "I brought a pie," but really means, "I'm here to ask just enough uncomfortable questions to ruin your day." The first person to spot the relative alerts everyone. Whispers quickly spread throughout the house. Whose aunt is that? Hide the dice. Somebody grab a clean apron. No, the other clean one. The transformation is swift. 1 minute, the common room is full of laughter and mild disorder. The next, it's a picture of medieval propriety. The brothel's most charming flirt suddenly becomes the assistant cook, and the loudest gambler turns into the night shift's bookkeeper. Even Brutus, sensing the shift in the room's mood, takes up his most dignified position, arranging his legs neatly and raising his head high, until the scent of the pie redirects his focus. Meanwhile, the visiting relative is ushered inside, with the reverence usually reserved for saints or tax collectors. She surveys the area, her eyes lingering on the patched curtains and the strangely lively game of chess using ale mugs and chicken bones. The introductions are a masterclass in quick thinking. This is Marjorie, who manages guest relations, and this is Will, who handles repairs. No one specifies exactly what he repairs, and Aunt Agnes wisely does not inquire further. Then come the questions. At first they are gentle, but soon they become more direct. "You seem busy, dear. Do you work long hours? Is that the same tunic I sent you last Easter? And why does the dog have his own bowl at the table?" The answers are equally vague. "Oh, the hours are steady. Yes, laundry day is tomorrow. Brutus is on a special diet." There's a shared hope that the pie, slightly burnt on one side, but still a miracle, will be enough to keep the conversation from venturing into uncomfortable topics. Every so often, a relative gets too comfortable and begins to wander. 3 workers quickly block the staircase. "It's drafty up there. We keep it closed." And someone is loudly recounting the latest market day disaster to divert attention. The guest book, a worn ledger filled with code names and doodles, is quietly moved to the kitchen under the watchful eyes of both the madam and the goat, just in case. Then comes dinner. If the relative stays, the tension rises. Each bite of pottage becomes a risk. Will they comment on the taste, the portion size, or the goat eating directly from the serving bowl? Surprisingly, most family members opt for tact rather than honesty. After all, criticizing the host's pottage is a social blunder. Even in a brothel, dessert, if available, is a delicate affair. Maybe a wrinkled apple appears, or a cup of the house's special wine. The conversation shifts to safer topics: the weather, distant relatives, and how nice it is that everyone here seems so close. Meanwhile, beneath the table, notes are passed, and feet are stepped on as workers silently debate who will take Aunt Agnes on the tour of the garden and goat pen. The farewell is an act in itself. Heartfelt hugs, promises to visit soon, and a gentle nudge toward the door. "Don't forget your pie tin. Give my regards to Uncle Ned." Once the door closes, the entire house exhales in relief. There's a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Later, when the relatives' footsteps fade away, the brothel returns to normal. Laughter resumes, The chess pieces are once again used as drinking tokens, and the pieces are cleaned by Brutus, followed by the goat. The stories will be retold for weeks. How Marjorie pretended to be the town's official candle tester. How Will almost gave away the game with a careless comment about the mayor's doublet. And how Aunt Agnes asked why so many people here share the same last name. It's just a very common name, isn't it? Family visits are always awkward, sometimes disastrous, but ultimately bonding in their own ridiculous way. And if nothing else, everyone gets a slice of pie and news stories for the next round of gossip. The brothel isn't the only business in town. There are rival houses up the street, each with its own madam, rules, and fierce loyalty to their brand of cheap perfume. The competition is fierce and often petty. Missing laundry, swapped signboards, or a goat mysteriously painted blue. On festival days, the rivalry spills into the open, with workers trying to outsing, outdance, and out-insult each other, while the townspeople place bets on who'll start the first food fight. Despite the drama, there's a strange camaraderie. After all, nothing unites the district faster than a surprise raid from the church. The unwritten rule is simple. The market isn't big enough for everyone to thrive, but it's big enough to sustain an endless cycle of petty sabotage. Your house might have the best stew or the softest straw, but the rival house claims to have better service and fewer goats in the bedrooms. Rivalry never truly rests, especially when purses are light and rumors are thick as the morning fog. Take the infamous signboard swap, for example. One foggy morning, the house woke up to find their old wooden sign replaced by a plank promising spiritual cleansing and honest fun, with a cheeky ask for Sister Agnes. 3 streets away, the rival house had their sign, now sporting a mustache, a questionable drawing, and hastily painted words, "All chickens welcome." For days, confused customers wandered from door to door, unsure whether they'd find a night of pleasure or a sermon on repentance. Laundry is another front in this silent war. If your socks go missing, don't blame the goat. Check the rival house's laundry line. Nothing sparks discord faster than finding your best petticoat paraded past your window, now wearing someone else's perfume and a suspicious patch where your name used to be. Petty pranks are the bread and butter of brothel rivalry. One time, a rival sent over a basket of welcome apples, each hollowed out and filled with pickled onions. Our response was swift. We filled their privy with a sack of frogs and hung a banner that read, "For a riveting good time, visit next door." Even Brutus the dog got involved, sneaking across enemy lines to steal sausages during a rival house feast and returning home with a string of links, looking like a conquering hero. It begins with the wind, howling through the twisted alleyways and shaking the shutters with such force that even the bravest guest might reconsider spending the night at the church instead. The first heavy raindrops hit the roof tiles, some of them intact, while others dangle on by habit. They find every crack, crevice, and forgotten hole. It's a brothel tradition. The moment the thunder strikes, someone yells, "Bucket Brigade," and half the staff rush to claim the driest spots. The rest dash around, collecting water in anything that holds liquid, and even some things that don't. In no time, the floors are flooded, and the front hall becomes a slippery obstacle course, covered with straw, discarded shoes, and wandering chickens fleeing the rising water. Guests try to help, but mostly end up tracking in more mud, turning the entrance into a medieval slip and slide. Anyone foolish enough to complain about the dampness is handed a broom and told to discover the joys of sweeping water uphill. Lighting becomes a group effort. The storm sucks the warmth from the hearth, so the madam orders every available lantern and tallow candle to be pressed into service. The effect is atmospheric, if you consider shadows that jump with every flicker, the constant smell of singed wicks, and the occasional candle snuffed out by a particularly ambitious drip from the ceiling. The main room glows with an uneven, uncertain light, perfect for swapping ghost stories and pointing fingers at whoever left the window open. Brutus, the mastiff, usually unshaken in a crisis, is reduced to a grumpy heap wedged behind a stack of firewood and refusing to budge, even for the promise of leftover stew. The goat, however, sees disaster as a chance for a little glory. He immediately climbs onto the furniture, settling himself on the highest bed and surveying the chaos below like a king on his throne, occasionally letting out a mournful bleat. If his bedding gets damped upstairs, finding a dry, warm spot to sleep becomes a competitive sport. Everyone wants the driest, least drafty corner, which leads to negotiations, bartering, and outright bribery. A coveted place near the fire could cost you tomorrow's breakfast, a rare bar of soap, or the promise to take the next shift on bucket. Duty, privacy becomes a foreign concept. Anyone with dry socks in the morning is automatically suspected of foul play or extraordinary luck. Outside, the wind howls through the cracks in the walls, creating an eerie harmony with the sounds of dripping, splashing, and the endless clattering of the madam's mop against the stone floors. She commands her crew like a general, barking orders, handing out towels, and sending anyone who dares linger by the ale barrel to find more motivation. Under her watchful eye, the brothel doesn't merely survive the storm, it embraces it, turning hardship into something almost festive. As the hours drag on and the thunder rattles the windows, spirits are lifted by shared suffering and a steady flow of stories. Some are true, most are embellished in the retelling. Someone inevitably raises a toast to dry feet and warm beds, and the whole house erupts in laughter, knowing well that neither is likely to happen tonight. By the time dawn arrives, the storm has passed. The floors are a little cleaner, and everyone has earned the right to grumble about the weather for at least a week. Because, in the medieval brothel, storms are simply part of life's lottery, a mix of inconvenience, entertainment, and a reminder that no matter how wild it gets outside, inside they weather it all together, once a year, in a bid to lift spirits and prevent tensions from escalating. The brothel holds its own election, a noisy contest to crown the next house favorite. Candidates campaign shamelessly, offering extra bread at breakfast, telling the best ghost stories, or bribing voters with promises of soap privileges and a turn in the best bed. The ballots are cast, mostly honestly, debates are passionate, and the goat always manages to become an unlikely candidate. The winner receives bragging rights, a second-hand tiara, and the dubious honor of organizing the laundry schedule for the month. It's medieval democracy at its finest, messy, loud, and like everything in the brothel, much more enjoyable if you don't take it too seriously. Election season kicks off whenever someone feels bored or when the first leaves fall, signaling it's time for a break from the usual routine of pottage, repairs, and the latest cold. The madam claims it fosters camaraderie. Skeptics argue it's just a way to see who can survive a week of non-stop flattery and insults. Either way, the atmosphere brightens the moment someone tacks last year's faded sash to the wall and announces their candidacy. Candidates appear from all corners. Some are expected, others overly optimistic. There's always the reigning champion, desperate for a second term, mainly to avoid laundry duty, and the underdog, who's determined to win with charm, wit, and a secret stash of dried apples for bribery. Occasionally, an ambitious apprentice will enter the race, only to realize too late that popularity contests require both a thick skin and a large supply of funny stories. Campaigning, as you'd expect, is pure spectacle. One candidate might wake up early to gather fresh rushes for everyone's bedding and then spend the day reminding everyone of their good deed. Another hosts impromptu debates in the common room, grilling opponents on topics such as stew ingredients, curfew times, and whether the rooster should be allowed inside. Handbills are out of the question. Paper is too expensive, so each hopeful announces their promises loudly, especially when the madam is nearby. Bribery is practically mandatory. Vote for me and I'll sneak you the best piece of cheese. Or my administration guarantees 2 extra minutes with the communal comb. Soap is the golden ticket of electoral currency. One candidate guarantees victory with an unscented bar. Some offer rare privileges, like a night off from bucket duty or the right to pick first from the lost and found box. Even Brutus, the mastiff, gets courted with bones and belly rubs, though his vote is easily swayed by whoever smells most like stew. Debates are lively and occasionally ridiculous. One year, the goat was nominated as a joke and ended up coming second, thanks to a well-organized animal faction. A brief attempt was made to introduce a debate moderator, but the cat, sensing the chaos, curled up on the ballots and refused to move. Policies are debated: how to keep the bathwater clean, whether singing after midnight should be banned, and who's responsible for the mysterious stains on the parlor curtains. Ballots, or whatever's available, torn cloth, old receipts, or even a particularly sturdy crust. Voting is supposed to be anonymous, though everyone knows who wrote Marjorie for president in chicken scratch. The counting is done ceremoniously, though with great confusion, often interrupted by a customer asking for a refill or a sudden rainstorm soaking the ballot box. In case of a tie, a runoff is decided by the most medieval of methods: arm wrestling, dice, or, in desperate times, a sing-off judged by the goat. When all is said and done, the new house favorite is crowned with a slightly bent tiara, given a standing ovation, and immediately bombarded with requests for favors, complaints about the stew, and urgent petitions about the mattress rotation. The celebration is loud, chaotic, and full of laughter that temporarily makes everyone forget about the next day's chores. In the end, not much changes, except the laundry schedule, and perhaps a feeling that, for all its madness, the brothel is a very democratic sort of disaster, at least until next year's election, when the goat runs again, promising hay for all.